Eeny, meeny, miny. Wait. A, B, C, A, B, C. All right. Hello, welcome back to Humble Running. Today I've got a special comparison review today. I'm going to be doing an A, B, plus C test run. So that means I'm going to be testing and running in not one, not two, but 3 different shoes. I'm going to have one shoe on each foot. If you haven't seen my Prodigio Pro versus S-Lab Genesis review, I go out for a segment, I have a different shoe on each foot, I come back, switch the shoes up. In this case, it's going to be a little bit different. I've got 3 shoes here. I've got the Brooks Caldera 8, I've got the North Face Enduris 4, and also I'm throwing in the Merrell MTL Adapt Matryx. The process is going to go down like this. I'm going to head out. I'm going to have a different shoe on each foot. I'm going to come back. Since I have 3 shoes instead of 2, I'm not just going to swap these. I'm kind of going to feel it out. I'll probably throw the Merrell on one foot when I get back. This is not really intended to be a full all scenarios review of each shoe. I have individual reviews for each of these shoes. So this is really just kind of impressions on the run, feeling out the comparisons. I really think doing it in this way, I was surprised by how I could dig out little nuances the last time I did the A/B test run with the La Sportiva and Salomon shoes. So I'm going to try to do that with these 3 shoes. They're similar shoes. They're cruiser type shoes, heavier, distance oriented models. There are some slight differences that I already have in mind between the 3 of them, but I think on the run those thoughts are going to come to me more clearly, so I'll share them as I go. As far as how I do these reviews, I've got one index card right here. I wrote down the specs just so I don't mess anything up. The specs, the pricing, the foam, sizing, things like that. But that's it. Everything else you hear out of my mouth on this run is not pre-planned. It's coming straight from the dome. So you're getting real on the run impressions here. So let's go. All right, round 1, we've got the Brooks Caldera 8 versus the North Face Vective Enduris 4. So what I'm noticing right away between these 2 shoes is the Caldera definitely has a flatter feeling landing. I did talk about this in my Caldera early review. The platform on the ground is very broad through the midfoot, through the rear, and you have a rocker which is far forward up by the toes. Definitely having the Enduris on my left foot, I can tell the broader landing of the Caldera 8. My foot strikes just feel a little flatter, especially as you go towards the back half of the shoe. The Enduris has more of a rolling feel to it. I think that's a staple of the Vective line. That kind of rear all the way through to the front rocker. Definitely noticed that here compared to the Brooks. I'm a midfoot, forefoot striker, so I don't get that full Vective roll from the heel, except maybe on slight descents. And in terms of fit, the Enduris has a very full fit under the arch. It's contoured under the foot, supportive, which I do really like. So when I land, I feel like I'm landing right on that supportive midfoot area, and then that rocker kind of engaging into a bit of a roll. So I will stack these shoes up side by side for the next round. I'm pretty sure that we'll see that the North Face rocker starts a bit further back, closer to the ball of the foot, even by the midfoot. As far as fit, the Enduris fit is a bit more dialed in. Both shoes have comfortable, wide enough toe boxes. The Caldera's definitely wider. The most difference I can feel is around the midfoot area. There's more material there, a bit more roominess. I think I've heard some people mention that North Face shoes perhaps are a bit squeezy and tight around some people's midfoots, you might want to take a look at the Caldera 8 if that's an issue that you do have. So they're both comfortably wide across the forefoot, but with the Enduris, I do feel my toes kind of pressed together. It has more of a taper in the front of the toe box. Actually, take a little stop here. We'll talk about it. I find about equal width across the forefoot right here, as I was saying. The North Face does seem to taper a little bit more at the toes, where you could probably see here the Brooks just stays wide up front. So I would say this is almost definitely a kind of a topo type fit. Maybe even some of the narrower, not crazy wide ultras with this one. You have that taper here, and also might get a better look when I stop. You have that rocker, which is more aggressive in the Vective models. Something I noticed also in my Pro 2 review, you know, it picks your toes up a little bit, so naturally they kind of get squeezed together, and you can almost even feel the pressure from the bottom of the shoe against your toes. Instead of having your toes kind of flat and loose, here you have the bottom of the shoe kind of pushing up due to the more aggressive rocker here. I didn't have any issues with the Pro 2 with that kind of rocker. It's something that I feel, maybe it's more efficient, maybe it helps you in terms of speed and efficiency in longer races. The Brooks, around this area, the fit isn't as dialed. That could be partly due to the underfoot contouring. I feel more support under the arch in the North Face shoe here. The Brooks, generally the platform is flatter, and also inside the shoe there's not as much contouring under the arch here, so I feel flatter also inside the shoe. So that may be a benefit for some if you like the more contoured arch support, kind of like some topos are. This one is the one to go with if that's your concern. Yeah, so due to that, I guess maybe the contouring, I feel a little bit snugger around this area. I definitely feel more secure in this shoe compared to the Caldera 8. The Caldera 8 feels like I've got it snug down. It doesn't feel loose. It doesn't feel like I'm going anywhere in it. But this one feels like, at least for my foot, it definitely wraps a bit better. In terms of ride and stack, I've got them both listed at 38.22. Both the 6 mil drop. Brooks stack are hard to come by. You may see lower numbers for the North Face shoe, but I learned at TRE they typically don't include the strobel board, the insole, outsole. Depending on who's taking the notes and who's keeping track of all that, you'll probably see lower numbers for the Enduris 4. But I've got them both at 38.22 foot to ground, and running in them both, they do feel identical stack-wise. The Enduris uses its Stream Foam, which is a nitrogen-infused TPU. The Caldera uses DNA Loft V3, which is a nitrogen-infused EVA. I don't feel too much difference in softness and response between the two of them. The Enduris Dream Foam, it's not as dynamically tuned, it seems, as the Pro model. It seems like a firmer type of TPU, not necessarily kind of like a bouncy foam that you might expect out of TPU. Certainly not as energetic as their Prodigio Pro's TPU. I've got both of these shoes in the US 10. Sizing feels right for me in those sizes. Again, the North Face feel a little bit more squeezy at the toes. I think that's due to just the taper and the rocker. But as far as space in front of the toes, it's good. Caldera, same lengthwise. You just have a little bit more space up at the front of the toe box. My Enduris pairs 10.9 ounces and the Caldera is 11.2. So those are kind of borderline a lot of shoe for me. Between the two of them, relatively speaking, I don't feel that much of a difference. That's 0.3 ounces. I don't really notice it too much. But over the longer haul, usually once I start getting around 11 ounces, that tends to be a bit much for me personally. But I'm a lighter runner. I'm about 137 these days, pounds. About 137 pounds these days. So if you're a heavier runner, I wouldn't be concerned about the difference in weight. That's going to be less apparent. For me, it will probably add up more as the miles go on. So for round 2, I am going to throw the Merrell MTL Adapt Matryx on, but I also am going to switch feet with the North Face shoe. I feel like the Merrell and the North Face shoe are probably going to feel closer together, at least for me. This one's a bit lighter. seems to have more flex to it versus the Caldera's kind of flatter, wider base. I want to feel out these two against each other. Well, before we take off, let's take a quick look at these platforms here. Get a flat spot here. The Caldera, you can definitely see it's wider here. The North Face actually has quite a wide forefoot. This is similar to the Pro too. The forefoot is very wide. It's hard to get a level kind of ground here, but definitely the Caldera gets wider under the midfoot and the rear. You can see that here. I mean, this is pretty chunky over here, pretty wide back here. If you take a look at the North Face shoe here, definitely slims down, not too much like a speed shoe. I mean, they're still going for stability, but you can see the big difference here between the forefoot area and the narrower heel, and it tapers in around the midfoot. The Caldera, you know, the forefoot and the heel are almost the same width, so that's why and it's also pretty wide over here, so that's why I say when I land it's kind of flat. I'm trying to get a gauge on the profile here. For me, this feels pretty flat from here to here, and then really up here I start noticing the rocker. Let's take a look at this North Face shoe. Yeah, you could see here, maybe I gotta get a little lower. You could see how it's more of a rocker from front to back. The heel is really off the ground about here, and then the rocker really starts here and really swoops up higher here. So I feel when I'm landing, I'm landing about here and really getting into that roll right away. Whereas with the Brooks, I feel like I'm landing more flat. As you can see, this is kind of the landing, and then I start to get into the rocker right forward at the toes. So you may like this kind of feel if you want to have stability, and you really, maybe rocker shoes are not for you. If you're not used to it, I feel like you have to be in a certain rhythm. It helps you keep a kind of steady landing and turnover with this type of rocker shoe. It can be efficient if you are used to it and you enjoy running in this style of shoe. If you prefer to be more stable and you just want something solid to land on, this would be something that you would want to look at. You want to just make sure you have, 4 points on the ground when you land, and then worry about the toe off next. Not all at, this one's kind of like all at the same time, landing and you're going right away. So next up, round two, we've got a new contender, the Merrell MTL Adapt Matryx against the North Face TNF Enduris 4. Let's go. So I've got the Adapt on my phone. I'm gonna call it the Adapt from now on because that name is too long. Adapt on the left foot, Enduris on the right foot. The Adapt is the lightest of my trio here at 10.2 ounces. That's something that was notable for me in my full review. It's got a lot of stack underfoot, but at 10.2 ounces, that's pretty light. That works out well for me. As far as specs, I've got the Adapt listed at 36.30, but I did measure 42 at the heel, so that would give 42.36 compared to the other shoes at 38.32. Really trying to feel out the stack height here. The heel definitely feels higher in the Merrell. So it definitely feels accurate saying that this one's 42 compared to 38 at the others. But I don't feel like the forefoot is much higher. It feels like the forefoot is about the same, which would give me a higher drop than the listed spec for the Merrell. I'm not sure about that. It could be due to the fact that the Enduris has this rocker profile, especially in the rear. So really not sure. The heel definitely feels elevated with the Adapt compared to the other one. I think with the rear rocker of the Enduris, once you kind of land on that midfoot, there's room for your forefoot and heel to sink down because they're kind of elevated off the ground. With the Merrell, you don't really have that rear rocker, maybe very slight at the very back, but nothing compared to the Vective rocker. So it feels like from midfoot through to the heel, it's more elevated with the Adapt. I feel kind of a similar sensation of arch support with the Adapt as the Enduris 4. In that regard, it's definitely closer. These two shoes are definitely closer than the Caldera. I feel even fuller support under the arch with the Merrell. The Merrell has that nice rocker up front, flex grooves throughout, especially under the ball of the foot. So despite the higher stack height, although again, I don't notice it too much under the forefoot between these two, I feel more ground feel with the Adapt. I feel like a solid amount of cushion and protection under most of the foot, from the middle to the rear, even under the forefoot, very protective. But I still feel I have that pretty good ground feel, something that I don't have with the Enduris or the Caldera. The Enduris that I have here on my right foot, definitely, it just has that steady rockered roll. It's wider under the forefoot. Take a look at that when we get back. So the Enduris, and probably most Vective models for that matter, really lean into that steady, efficient, rockered stride. The Merrell seems to allow a bit more freedom, a bit more feel. That's why I kind of liked it. If you've seen my video review, I took that through a bit of twisty, steep, kind of windy terrain, and I felt they performed much better than I thought they would, especially since I measured 42 under the heel. I don't think the Enduris would be as good in that type of shifty terrain, varying foot strikes, kind of agile style. This shoe just wants to tick off those steps, stay steady, stay efficient, which is good, just different. Just as I said that, I went through a little bit of a up and down, a little twist, a few rocks, and I'm not trying to say the Enduris can't handle that type of terrain. I just kind of trying to point out what it feels best at, because I've taken these Enduris down a pretty steep section, which I'm not going to hit today, and they felt pretty good. Again, when I was talking about the fit against the Caldera, I feel more dialed in with the Vective, so fit and feeling secure goes a long way into how agile you could take a shoe. So the Merrell here's got a nitrogen infused EVA midsole. Got a firmer carrier on the outside. Talk about this a lot. Go check out my full review. It's not soft. Actually, all three of these shoes, in terms of cushion and softness, feel similar. Can't really pinpoint much of a difference between the foams, despite the fact that the Dream foam of the Enduris is a TPU. So cushion-wise, they feel the same. I think you're just gonna get more of a difference between platform on the ground and also the rocker profile between these three shoes. So I've got the Merrell here in a 9.5. The other two shoes, like I said, are 10. Again, I find the forefoot space about the same between all three shoes. Width, it's not as wide as the Caldera and not as tapered as this one. It's somewhat in the middle. Not sure if you could see. You have a rocker, but not as aggressive as the Vective rocker here. So I don't have that pressure under the toes from the bottom of the shoe as I do here. Given that I have a 9.5 here, I was initially skeptical, but it works fine for me. Because it doesn't have that rocker, and because it's wide enough, I don't get pressure in the front of the toe box. This one I'd be nervous to go 9.5 with, mostly due to that rocker. Then my toes would kind of get pushed together even more, and with the rocker and with the half size down, I wouldn't want to do that in there. Perhaps the Caldera though, the Caldera is spacious and flatter. So I might be able to do a 9.5 in the Caldera. So you probably already noticed the Enduris is the only plated shoe here. The Merrell and the Brooks don't have a plate. I don't think the plate hinders performance in any way. For the two shoes that don't have the plate, the Enduris kind of has this cage, similar to the Pro 2. I think it stabilizes the rocker geometry probably, because it's quite wide under the forefoot, and they want to maintain that roll. It does feel nice and stable, and the plate is also quite flexible. I don't feel any stiffness at all. I don't feel any firmness. It does seem to add a bit of kind of lateral stability to the Enduris. The Adapt has a narrower platform definitely than both of these two shoes, so a more agile feel, better ability for foot placements. I feel more agile in the Adapt. The lighter weight also helps. 10.2 is a full ounce lighter than the Caldera, 0.7 ounces than this Enduris. Again, I have a half size down in the Merrell, but the sizing is roughly equivalent. It's definitely a lighter shoe. So I am going to switch it up here. I'm going to go Merrell versus Caldera, and that will be the most drastic difference out of these three shoes. Not that they're totally different. Let me just, yeah. These are flatter, definitely wider. Okay, just wanted to get a quick spot check there. So I've got 11.2 ounces on my left foot right here, and I got 10.2 now on my right foot. Definitely platform difference as well. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, quite a difference. I noticed the difference in stack height more with the Merrell here. I didn't notice it so much with the North Face shoe, but with the Merrell, definitely feel higher up compared to the Caldera. It could be that this is just wider and my foot is just spreading out more in this one. So let's take a quick look at the shoes that we just had on. Got the Adapt here, Enduris here. Lining them up, you could see how much wider this one is. The forefoot of the Enduris definitely wider compared to the Merrell here. The Merrell, you're narrower. Notice you have a lot of segmentation in this shoe. Because it does have the higher stack, I think that really helps with the flex. You can see how this shoe really flexes despite having kind of that big stack, and you can see how it flexes around those grooves. This shoe here, a little bit of flex, not so much torsionally, but you can see how it doesn't really adapt as much as this one. It really wants to just roll. Same here with the Caldera. They've added these grooves around here to kind of help, but I guess these definitely help a little bit, but it's more along the lines of this shoe here than the Adapt. So again, putting these up, yeah, it's narrower. See how much more you got here under the heel. Pretty much throughout, this platform right here is narrower. Grabbing my Calderas, these are the shoes on my feet right now. The Caldera's forefoot is about the same, but then you can see the big difference under the midfoot in the rear. Big difference there. So way narrower here. This is so much wider, and this is so much wider. And also, again, you have that flex here. Forefoot similar. The widest forefoot for sure is this one. It does kind of, you could see it from above, it kind of flares out, and that's similar with the Pro model. It flares out to the bottom, so, and it has that cage to kind of stabilize that width, so it still works. Round 3, back to the Caldera against the Merrell Adapt this time. So this is definitely the most drastic difference between the three shoes that I'm testing. Kind of set it up this way because I thought that would be the case. So running in these three shoes, the Enduris and the Caldera seem similar. Enduris and the Merrell seem similar, but Merrell and the Caldera seem quite different. So I've had to rank them and or put them on the shelf in a certain order. I'd put the Merrell on one side, I'd put the Enduris in the middle, and then the Caldera on the far side. So given the stack heights of all three of these shoes, they're definitely in that long distance, cruiser, potential distance ratio for some runners. As far as how I'd arrange them, I'd probably arrange them similarly. As far as the most stability, the most cruisery of the shoes, definitely go with the Caldera. It has the widest platform, probably the most stable, most volume in the upper. If you need volume above all else, I'd choose the Caldera. And then kind of in the middle, the Enduris just cruises. It's nicely stable. That cage keeps the rocker geometry in line. It keeps it rolling forward, maintains good lateral stability. That'd be the next option as far as a long distance cruiser. And then you have the Adapt. If you're looking for lightweight and still a high stack, some may not like the full feeling under the arch and under the heel. It almost feels like this shoe, the Adapt, has the highest effective feeling drop out of these three shoes. But it's a full ounce lighter, and the Caldera I've got on my left foot here, solid amount lighter than the Enduris. If you're a lighter weight, pretty much go with the Adapt all the way. As far as going beyond the cruising realm, I'd probably put them, again, lined up the same way. Caldera 8, definitely the least agile of them. It's just wide. It's probably the least secure of the uppers, for my foot that is. And that just comes down to volume. If you have a higher volume foot, it's not insecure. It's gonna be fine. For me, the Enduris 4 and this Adapt, especially with the Matryx upper, they have the more secure fit. I lean towards those two in more moderate, even technical terrain. I stick to moderate terrain in the Enduris 4, just because that geometry really wants to be going forward, and that's when it's most efficient. So technical terrain, I don't think that would be the best option, but the cage handles moderate terrain well, so I don't think you'll have issues. The Merrell, on the other hand, it's narrower, more agile, good amount of flex from the outsole, the midsole, Flex Connect setup. If you really want to say what's the most versatile shoe out of these three, it would definitely be the Adapt here. Another topic is the outsole. All three of these have got equal 4 mil lugs. The Merrell's got Vibram Mega Grip. The Brooks has their Trail Tack, and the North Face has their Surface Control rubber. For sure, the North Face probably has the worst reputation with their outsole. My Pro 2s, they're kind of showing good amount of wear, relatively speaking, compared to other shoes. I haven't had a problem with Brooks outsoles, especially in my Catamount shoes. They've been highly durable, pretty good in the mostly dry terrain that I'm running in. They've lasted really long, and I would say that it's just a solid outsole. I mean, Vibram Mega Grip, of course, speaks for itself. So I would say top outsole here, especially with those segmentations and the flex grooves, would be the Merrell, if that was a big consideration. That might be something that maybe until North Face builds up its reputation. Some people want to ensure durability for the money they're spending. Merrell may be one to look at here. And also the Brooks. So price-wise, the Merrell's gonna come out, I believe, in the spring for $180. I think it's the most versatile shoe out of the three, and it's the highest priced one. It does have Matryx upper, Vibram Mega Grip. You've got some name brand and proven technologies built in. The Enduris 4, I believe, just came out. That one's $160, and the Caldera is listed at $150. So I think those prices are pretty much in line with each other. The Merrell does feel like more of a performance shoe, and the Brooks more of kind of everyday utilitarian shoe, so to speak. And then kind of in line with the performance, the Endurance 4 lands in the middle. So I've got full individual reviews up for the MTL Adapt Matryx. Also the Caldera, I have an early review. The Enduris 4 is the last one I've got in line, so I'll be doing an individual review a little bit further on that one. So final thoughts, where do I see these shoes lining up? The Caldera 8, let's start here. For me, this is a big improvement from version 6 that I've tested. Personally, it's still a bit too wide for me. It's still a bit too much shoe. 11.2 ounces, a bit heavy for me. As I talked about, this is probably the most cruisery shoe of them all. If you need volume in an upper, but you don't want quite a topo level or ultra level toe box, this is probably a good option. As far as personally, my training cruising miles, I'm really starting to like this shoe. The weight is up there, but on days when I want to really protect my feet, feel stable, and maybe keep the paces more under control, with this geometry and the way you land and the way it kind of wants to run, I find that it forces me to keep a more steady cadence, a more kind of steady pacing throughout my run. So despite it being 10.9 ounces, which is on the verge of being a little heavy for my taste and my size and weight, it's actually kind of growing on me. The fact that it has a very secure upper also helps a lot, because I find a bit more range in the shoe in technical terrain that I don't find in the Caldera 8. Just because it's so wide, I find a hard time with controlling it with the foot placements. I just don't feel agile in this. It's too big of a shoe for me. And also, there's more volume in the upper. For my foot, I don't feel as locked down. So this one is great, really great upper, secure. As far as the cruiser type of training miles, I would pick this one. I would also pick the Merrell. This is significantly lighter than the Caldera, a full ounce, and it's also not significantly lighter, pretty lighter than this one. And you get more versatility with this shoe. You can put out the cruiser miles, but it's just more flexible, especially given the stack height. So I find I could feel more comfortable with this shoe in moderate terrain and even some parts of technical terrain. The Vibram Mega Grip helps a lot with that. The Matryx upper also helps a lot with that. I do feel like I have the most secure upper with this shoe. It's similar to the Enduris, but again, the Enduris has this rocker up front, so in technical terrain, that doesn't quite work as well. I feel like I have more feel in my toes, in the front of the toe box, being that this is, this front rocker is not jacked up so high as the Vective here. So this would be my overall versatile pick. Something I talked about, this is the most full feeling, probably it's outlined in this midsole right here. It feels very full under the arch and through to the heel. So it feels like the most drop out of any of the shoes in this one. Some people may be turned off by, it feels prominent under the arch, so I know some people may be turned off by that feeling. This has a similar feel, although it's not as high under the arch. It's more supportive, and you kind of feel it just because the toe is up and the heel is up. So the arch is kind of the spot that is, the lever of the geometry in this shoe. So it's not necessarily that this arch, that this contour is protruding into your arch. It's more, has to do with the geometry. The Brooks, again, the flattest platform, the flattest underfoot, the flattest contouring inside, and, the most volume in the upper. So there's probably, these are 3 different shoes, probably a lot for different types and different styles of runners and different types and different styles of running with these models. So really great cruiser options with range for more, especially with these 2 models for 2025. I hope you enjoyed this triple review here, ABC. Again, everything's coming, howdy. Again, everything's coming straight off the top of my head on this run. I had my little index card with the specs on there. So if I did forget something, fire away in the comments, and we'll see you for the next A, B, C, D test run. We'll see.